Here's an interesting concept. Relatively. Oh, absolutely. It seems to have struck a chord with a lot of people that were around at that time, and also people that weren't, because they've got a glimpse into something that's often been spoken about but never really been put under a microscope. I mean, the term punky reggae party has been bandied around for a long time, but I mean, I like to think that the film sort of looks at the myth and the reality of what that was, because I think it's kind of the last story of British punk rock. I haven't made it yet. I hope, but I'm pretty proud of things like Dancehall Queen, my movie that my first feature film I shot in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. Very pleased with the reception of that, being, you know, British born black and having the movie being received so well in Jamaica was a buzz. Pretty pleased with my film Punk Attitude, because the whole idea of that was to put that spirit in the context of an ongoing dynamic that people could access and hopefully be part of. So in other words, to try and make it proactive and push things forward, as opposed to a dead thing that people are looking back on, which punk was never supposed to be something you look back on. It's something that you look forward to. It's like your birthright, you know. So I'm very pleased with that. There's a few other little things, you know, Past the Dutchie video for Musical Youth, some of the Clash videos, Clash Westway to the World. So you've got me started now. Mm-hmm. Basically, if I put something out there, you know, yeah. I think space is very valuable and not to be taken lightly. So if I put something out there, for me, yeah, it's got to justify that. So yeah, I'm pleased with everything I've done. Actually, there's a couple of dodgy videos I probably wouldn't talk about when I had to pay the rent, but 2 out of 400, you know, that ain't too bad. I don't need no blessing by society. I mean, if people value that stuff, great. I don't know, man. You know what's funny about the Grammy? After I got the Grammy, I didn't work for 6 or 7 months. Because apparently the school of thought is that if you've got a Grammy, then you're too expensive, you know, to approach. And I didn't work for ages after that. In fact, I think the next thing I did after that was a documentary on Gil Scott-Heron. It's at home, it's like I use it as a doorstop. Mm-hmm. In my world, that doesn't mean much. Oh, man. Happiest memory. Well, sitting behind the decks at the Roxy, you know, I guess... And it was a moment. It was 100 days. You know, in a lifetime, that's a moment. But, I mean, what an eventful 100 days. If I hadn't met the punks, you probably wouldn't be talking to me now, because it was through their energy and inspiration that I was moved to pick up a movie camera and reinvent myself as a filmmaker. I mean, I had the idea years before, seeing, I saw the film Harder They Come in the early 70s, Jamaica's most famous film, great movie starring Jimmy Cliff. And I was really impressed by the way it entertained, informed and inspired, because as a first-generation British-born black at that time, it's funny, I use that term British-born black, rolls off the tongue now, but back then a very confusing concept, you know. And we knew what we sounded like because we had a soundtrack, reggae, but we really didn't know what we looked like. And the only other images we saw of back home were like on postcards, some man riding a donkey on a beach in a straw hat, or limbo dancing. And then 2 things happened to change that. The advent of Bob Marley and a film, Harder They Come, which spoke volumes to kind of the black British youth that were growing up in this country and were looking for this kind of information, you know, visual accompaniment for their culture. Anyway, saw Harder They Come, thought, wow, I'd like to make films. Mm-hmm. But at that time in my life, and in the social conditions of the UK at that time, ridiculous idea. I mean, a black man at that time was supposed to drive a bus or deliver the post. But then 5, 6 years later, punk rock comes along with the whole DIY thing, do it yourself. And when my white mates are picking up cameras, I wanted to pick up something too, so I picked up a movie camera and here I am, done next. Movie maker. Man, there are a lot of them. I mean, when people started dropping dead, that weren't too good. I mean, Sid becoming a victim of his own hype was kind of sad. And there are a few others, but man, not too many bad ones. I mean, that was pretty bad. Because all of a sudden shit got real. You know, before that, I mean, there was outrage and people spinning and gobbing and all this stuff, but nobody had died. And Sid you know, the media had blown him up to be this kind of caricature that he never was. He was a big softie, to be honest, but then he started to believe his own hype and became a victim of it, has to be said. That I remember, that's easy. I mean, I saw the gig. I actually seen him play before. I saw the famous legendary gig at the Lyceum and walked out of that gig a changed man. Anyway, a few years later he played at the Hammersmith Odeon. I think he did a run of nights. And one night, the band packed up after they'd finished playing and got in their coach and drove to their hotel, which at that time was in a place called Harrington Gardens in Kensington. I got in my car, followed the coach, and walked into his hotel room with all the other musicians and the UK Rasta elders. And that's where I kind of struck up a relationship with him. I mean, people say you're a friend of Bob Marley. I used to sell the brother weed for a year. Friend, did he call me up? Not really. You know, in fact, the last time we spoke, we had an argument about punk rock, which was quite funny. But on that night, I followed him in with all the Rasta elders, and he proceeded to kind of reason and smoke with everybody on a table in the middle of the room. Well, this went on to about 3 in the morning, and after a while he'd out-reasoned and out-smoked everybody. And he looked around the room and he saw me in a corner of the room with my pathetic little bag of weed, and I was summoned to the table, where he proceeded to reason and finish my smokes as well. But by the end of that, we'd struck up a brief relationship because he was actually staying in London. He'd come back to stay in, 1977 after he'd been shot in Jamaica. And then he was staying in Oakley Street in Chelsea, which was just around the corner from where I was managing a shop called Acme Attractions. And he'd pop by and I'd go around to Oakley Street so I could take care of him. I can't remember, man. I mean, I remember being quite surprised. I think other members of Aswad played on that track, if I remember rightly. I was just so taken by the fact that Bob had done that after our argument 3 months before, where he had denounced the whole thing. But that was cool because basically when he first heard of punk, he got the tabloid version, and the papers painted a very negative idea of what punk was about. You know, nihilism and negativity. And I mean, I don't think it was ever about that. You know, it was about empowerment, freedom, and individuality. You know, and I think what happened was Bob, because he was staying in London, got more familiar with the scene through a few particular journalists, one called Chris Salovich, and another lady who's now a punk professor in New York City, Vivian Goldman. But they are they've been behind reggae for a long, long time. They're journalists and authors in their own right. What, you mean that picture book with really long captions? Man, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it seems to have struck a chord with a lot of people that can identify with my cultural journey. I mean, I sort of had my arm twisted with that. People say, you should do what you do, but, you know, I just do what I do. I've never really thought that I've done anything that justified being in a book. I mean, when I was a kid, books were for special people, man. In the 21st century, in fact, the latter half of the 20th century, all of a sudden any dickhead could have an autobiography. I mean, people having autobiographies like 18 years old. I mean, ridiculous. So it's a different kind of cultural climate. And I mean, I tried not to be part of that bullshit. I tried to make it have some value in that it wasn't so much about I did this or I did that, but it was putting it in the context of this ongoing journey that through culture I was kind of growing as a person. And you know, I realised very early on, especially in the punk rock days, it was through understanding our differences that really made us closer, not by trying to be the same. So, I mean, the whole culture clash thing is a big ongoing part of my life. At different times, different people. I mean, Bob came along at a time in my life where, you know, we were running around like headless chickens in the 70s, you know, trying to be black and British, not knowing where we fit in. You know, Bob was, you know, Joe Strummer, you know, being able to, you know, converse with that man and feel his energy and feed off that energy. As a trip. Lydon, you know, Lydon was the first man to take me to Jamaica, man. You know, and I'll love the brother till he dies, no matter how many butter adverts he does. I mean, that trip was really special. You know, what happened was the Pistols broke up at the end of '77, and John was kind of looking to escape the paparazzi madness that was going on around that, and went with Richard Branson to Jamaica to start a reggae label, in the same way that Blackwell had Island Records, and that was partially because of the interest of the punks in Jamaican music. I mean, basically, Richard spotted a new market. Mm-hmm. And he took John along to Jamaica because John knew his reggae, you know. And then John asked me along because I was black and his mate and Jamaican, sort of. Although I'd never been. I mean, the closest I'd ever been was, as I said in my movie, watching A Harder They Come. And over the next 2 weeks, it's probably the most magical journey of my entire life. Because what happens is we fly in, we check into the Sheraton Hotel, Richard books the whole of the first floor, and then over the next 2-3 weeks, it was like the jungle drums were beating. Rich white man on the island, come and get some money. Because literally, over the next 2 weeks, every single reggae artist, except for Bob, Burning Spear, Peter Tosh, and Bunny Wailer. Other than that, I kid you not, nearly every single reggae artist passed through that hotel. It wasn't like they came in and hi, bye. They came and they'd be there for like 2 or 3 days hanging out with Branson, trying to get a deal, trying to impress John. And just, I'm not being funny, but even them, in those days, the Rastas were kind of frowned upon. I mean, people think they've always been, you know. But and the hoteliers didn't want them in the hotel, but they couldn't stop them because Branson was picking up the bill. But for 2 or 3 weeks, it was like a Rasta camp. It was a ganja camp. And we struck up some good friendships at that time with artists like Big Youth, I-Roy, particularly U-Roy. And out of that journey, Branson created the label called Frontline, which is a fantastic body of work. But, you know, to be sitting poolside and there's Scratch and there's Tardo and there's Far Eye and there's the Abyssinians and the Gladiator, all these people all around me every day. It was a trip that I'll never forget. Glimpses of which are in my, current film, 2 Sevens Clash.
Yes.
No. I don't call myself Rasta. I don't call myself anything. There was a period when, I went to Ethiopian Doctrine Church and I did all that, went to 12 Tribes meeting. As I've grown as a person, I've come to decide that the best name for me is Don Letts. I'm not, there's a thing about labels. You give yourself a label and it's kind of hard to be, something else. Another thing that bugged me was, when I was a younger person, it's a long time now since I called myself a Rasta. People say, oh, so you do this, you do that. There are these preconceptions, and I was never comfortable with that. I'm still learning, I'm still growing. I like to remain open to all the world has to offer. So, yeah, Rasta, as a label for me, don't work. The next man can wear that label, it's fine, I'm no problem with that. But for me, Don Letts works fine because it's malleable. It can evolve and it can change. And no one you can pin me down. Oh, you mean people having some fucked up dimensions like any other group of people? With all the contradictions and bullshit that any other group that you put in a mass and they subdivide into these things that go from one end of the spectrum to the other, good and bad. I haven't met any large group that doesn't do that. Fragment into good and bad and bullshit. They're closer to home and I address them in my own way. I don't play homophobic music. I don't play overly violent music. I mean, you've got to understand, when I was growing up, there was some of that stuff. There's always been a bit of that stuff. Rekka Pum Pum and, was it, Yellow Man and all that. There's always been a bit of slackness there, but I think the difference now is that it's out of balance. There's more of that than there is of the righteous stuff that makes you think. And that's really simple. I mean, if people are given the choice to think or escape, which do you think they gravitate to? They go to escape because if you're listening to a root singer, he's going to make you think about what you're doing, and you can't carry on with your bullshit if you're into that. But if it's about party time and just dancing on the floor, then you can get away with murder, and I think that's why there's been a shift, because people don't want to face reality. But it's always been there, and I do my bit to chip away at not propagating the elements that I think are negative, like homophobia, for instance. I mean, I've been asked to make videos for certain reggae artists, and I'm looking at the lyrics, and I'm like, nah, I ain't going there. And I don't play that stuff out there and play it on my radio show. And, some things about women, I'm like, yo, ain't people got daughters and sisters and mothers? The funniest thing about all this stuff is, You go to a show in Jamaica, man, it's the girls are up front, like, you know, loving this stuff. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway. McGarvey. Yeah, what a mess, eh? Yeah. I think, again, you have to put in context. You have to look at people from the outside, not knowing the whole picture and seeing, you know, they've been downtrodden all their life and they're desperate for people in position to kind of symbolise what they're aspiring to. So you're not getting the full facts about McGarvey, but he seems to be a man in position from a distance at that time that was doing things for his people. So everybody went, yeah, McGarvey. And then you kind of start to peel away the layers and you find out, hold on, there's a lot of people like that. I mean, I don't want to upset them, but you know, look at the reality of people like, I don't want to piss people. Look at some of Marcus Garvey's ideas. Not all cool. I mean, supporting the Ku Klux Klan, not cool, brother. You know. What is it that, I think I told you this the other day, Sun Ra, a famous quote that always stuck in my mind. Ain't nothing all beautiful. You got to have some ugly in it. Isn't that a contradiction of terms? Having said that, you know, hey, Obama, I didn't think I'd ever live to see that happen. You know, and a tremendously empowering moment for people of colour all around the world. So yeah, that's easy. Obama.
No Mandela.
Politician. Yes, I should have said Mandela. It didn't even occur to me. No, you'd have to be up there. I just don't think of Mandela as a politician. That's what it is. That's what it is.
And least.
I met Mandela, you know, man. I met him. I went to, what was it? I was filming some of the celebrations of independence in Namibia. And I got to shake the brother's hand, and I remember looking at him and feeling for the brother because he had the hopes of this whole nation on his shoulders. And man, what a weight to carry. What a weight. Oh man, you know, you can get into this pantomime shit of the Thatchers and the Mays and the Trumps. But, you know, sometimes you get the bloody politicians you deserve. And I quite often think that they're kind of a reflection of society in general. I'm not comfortable with this pantomime bad guy thing. I think, you know, we have to look at the shared responsibility. I mean, how else does something like Trump happen if people haven't taken their eye off the ball and let standards decline whereby somebody with no qualifications can be in that position in the first place? I mean, you know, you wouldn't let a doctor that had never done surgery do a heart operation or brain operation, would you? You'd have to have some qualifications. So yeah, I think there's a complicit guilt in the madness that's going on, and we need to address that. And this, you know, he's a baddie thing, it's detracting from the real problem, and we're all part of it. My kids like crap music. Hold on, greatest disappointment. Oh man, people. That's easy, fucking people, man. You know. We haven't evolved that much. I mean, the basic things that are wrong with this planet are down to very basic things that were the same shit when we were living in caves. You know. So yeah, people are a disappointment. And to see things like the Brexit thing, like Trump and the whole divide and rule thing, I mean, these old games being played over and over and over and constantly working when, you know, if you have a bit of time and a bit of sense and knowledge and you can educate yourself, you can see the repetition of these things happening. But would have liked to have been able to play a musical instrument, but I think if I could play an instrument, I would be unbearable. Because I can do a lot of shit now, and I'm, you know, close to being unbearable as it stands. But if I could stand toe to toe with musicians and do my thing, oh my god, oh my god. So I think not playing an instrument's kept me kind of humble. Wouldn't mind making it for another 10 years. Another 10 years. I wouldn't mind another 10 years. Man, don't follow me, I'm lost too. And it's funny, I'm as old as rock and roll, man. I'm 61 years old now, and you know, you're supposed to get older and wiser, but I got screwed on the wiser part, because I don't know what the hell's going on. You know, it's very interesting times. I mean, I think we've been thrown a curveball by the advent of technology, and I think we're almost like kids in a sweet shop where it's overwhelmed us and evolved actually quicker than we have, because you know our basic problems have been constant from caveman days. Hence the nonsensical way we use a lot of this technology, like Facebook and all this social media thing. But technology is not the problem. As I said before, it's us. Technology is great, people are shit.
Okay.
Yeah, how could you not be? I mean, how could you not be? And also, you know, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, how could you not be? Anybody's early demise, really. Don't have to be Joe Strummer. I mean, you know, if somebody gets shortchanged before they get to fulfil their journey, I mean, yeah, that's sad. And, you know, even for people that nobody knows, that are dropping dead all around. I mean, I watch the news every day. It keeps me grounded, and I see the cards that most people are dealt on this planet. And we've become anaesthetised. I mean, you know, Grenfell Tower the other day, 80 odd and probably more people dead. But that shit's going on every second of the fucking day, man. But you know, they're numbers on papers and things on the news. But people got to realise these are people. People, you know, 500 got blown up by, I don't know, suicide bombing, wherever. You know, it's and it's only when you're when it's on your doorstep that you begin to really go, oh my God. But we've become pretty, what's the word? Anaesthetised to these kind of tragedies, and we need to engage with the planet more, and we need to have a lot more empathy. Well, like I said, I watch the news every day, and I'm fucking on top of the world because I just said, I look at the cards that people get dealt, and how could I not happy? I don't know if happy is the right word. That might not be the right word, but relative to what my life could be and how it is for most people. You know, it'd be churlish for me not to kind of appreciate it. You know, the journey that I've had. I'm still alive. You know, a result in the 21st. You know, I was saying to you the other day. You know, in the West, growing old is like a fucking curse, and people don't realise that for most people on this planet, it is a privilege to get to be old. So you know, like I say, if you engage with the planet and look at what's going on and look how your fellow man's being treated, it'll kind of kind of gives you a more grounded view of your own life, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, happy is not the right word, but yeah, I was going to say lucky, but no, that's the wrong word too, because I don't believe in luck. I've made everything I've done, I've chosen to do. But yeah, it's not a bad trip. Not bad. Not bad.
Well done, you. And thank you for the interview.